Our top story today is from Nigeria. The West African country has said that it was not worried about the impact of tariffs imposed by US President Donald Trump. In August, the Trump administration slapped a 15% tariff on Nigerian goods, but oil and gas were exempted. It has been nearly 3 months since the US tariffs on Nigeria took effect. But the West African nation has said that the tariffs did not harm it as much as other countries. These remarks were made by Nigeria's Foreign Minister, Yusuf Tugar, during a media interaction.
The tariffs imposed by the U.S. do not necessarily harm Nigeria to the extent that they may others. One, because we are a very large country, like you said in your introduction, a country of 230 million people, so we have a huge internal market, and we've got not only size, but we've got scale.
As to why Trump's tariff did not bother Nigeria much, the foreign minister cited the country's huge internal market, with a population of 230 million, which is expected to grow to 400 million by the year 2050. The minister said that Nigeria was not entirely dependent on the US for trade and had multiple trade partners in South America and Asia as well.
The US, we trade with China, we trade with Brazil, we trade with India, and our focus is not necessarily on one axis or the other, or especially in a multipolar world.
Breaking news is rippling across global markets tonight. Trump has pulled the tariff trigger again, and Nigeria is not blinking. The United States president has announced a new round of trade penalties, aimed squarely at strategic imports linked to Africa's largest economy, steel-linked products, aluminum-related inputs, select energy and industrial exports, high-impact sectors, high political symbolism. The response from Abuja was immediate and unexpectedly calm. No panic, no threats, no retaliation rhetoric. Nigeria says it is not bothered. That single line is now echoing across diplomatic circles. Because this is not just about tariffs. This is about power, influence, and the shape of the next global trade war. The tariffs are part of a broader Trump strategy to pressure trading partners he accuses of unfair practices, currency manipulation, and industrial favoritism. Nigeria, with its growing manufacturing base and expanding export reach, has suddenly been pulled into the crosshairs. Officials close to the United States president argue the measures are defensive. They say domestic industries are under threat. They insist the tariffs are necessary to protect jobs at home. But in global capitals, the move is being read very differently. As escalation, as provocation, as another front opening in an already overheated trade battlefield. Nigeria's exports to the United States may not dominate global trade volumes, but they hit sensitive supply chains. Raw materials, semi-finished goods, energy-linked components, inputs that feed larger manufacturing ecosystems across Europe and Asia. That is why markets reacted fast. Shipping stocks dipped. Commodity prices twitched. Currency traders moved into defensive positions. Yet Nigeria stayed composed. Senior economic voices in Abuja described the tariffs as manageable. They emphasized diversification, alternative markets, stronger regional trade links, Africa-first trade strategies. The message was clear. Nigeria is prepared. And that message landed hard. For years, the assumption in Washington and beyond was that emerging economies would scramble when confronted with trade pressure from the United States. That tariffs would force concessions. That economic shock would lead to quiet backroom deals. Nigeria is challenging that script. Officials point to growing trade ties with Asia, deepening partnerships across the Middle East, expanding intra-African commerce under continental trade frameworks. They argue that reliance on the United States market is shrinking, and they say these tariffs may accelerate that trend. Behind the scenes, Nigerian policymakers see opportunity in disruption. If access to the United States tightens, they say, new doors open elsewhere. New buyers, new routes, new alliances. That confidence is unsettling global observers. Because trade wars feed on fear, and Nigeria is showing none. Meanwhile, the wider world is watching closely. In Europe, trade analysts warn that unilateral tariffs risk fragmenting already fragile supply chains. Several European economies rely indirectly on Nigerian raw materials that pass through global processing networks. In Asia, manufacturing hubs are calculating knock-on effects. If Nigerian exports are rerouted, pricing dynamics change. Availability shifts. Competition intensifies. China, already locked in long-running trade friction with Washington, is monitoring the situation with interest. Nigerian commodities have long featured in Beijing's strategic sourcing calculations. A shakeup could favor Asian buyers or deepen global volatility. Across Africa, reactions are mixed. Some governments quietly applaud Nigeria's posture. They see it as a sign of growing continental confidence, proof that African economies no longer have to flinch at every external shock. Others worry about precedent. If trade pressure spreads, smaller economies could struggle to absorb the impact. This is why the stakes feel so high. Trump's tariffs are not isolated. They sit within a pattern. Canada, Europe, Asia, Latin America, now Africa. Each move adds friction. Each response raises the temperature. And trade wars rarely stay contained. The United States president has framed tariffs as leverage, as tools to force renegotiation, as instruments of national strength. But history offers a darker lesson. Tariffs invite retaliation. Retaliation invites escalation. Escalation disrupts growth. Nigeria, however, is refusing to play that game. No counter tariffs announced. No emergency summits called. No threats issued. Instead, calm statements. Strategic messaging. Long-term planning. That calm is strategic. By not reacting emotionally, Nigeria denies the tariff shock its intended psychological impact. It reframes the story. From pressure to resilience. From dominance to defiance. Global investors are now reassessing Nigerian risk. Some see danger. Others see maturity. Nigeria's central economic planners have emphasized macroeconomic buffers, foreign reserves, export diversification, domestic market scale. They argue the economy can absorb short-term shocks. They argue the real risk lies elsewhere. In the erosion of trust. In the politicization of trade. In the normalization of economic weapons. Because once tariffs become routine, no trading relationship feels secure. That uncertainty is spreading. In financial centers tonight, analysts are revising forecasts. Slower growth, higher costs, more volatility. Shipping insurers are recalculating risk premiums. Logistics firms are reviewing routes. Multinational manufacturers are rethinking sourcing strategies. All because of one announcement and one calm response. Trump's tariffs were meant to send a message. Nigeria sent one back, without raising its voice. That exchange now defines the moment. A world where economic power is contested not just by size, but by strategy. Where calm can be as disruptive as confrontation. Where trade wars ignite not with explosions, but with paperwork and press releases. And this one is far from over. If the United States expands the tariff list, pressure will intensify. If Nigeria deepens alternative trade partnerships, influence will shift. If other nations follow Nigeria's lead, the entire trade landscape could tilt. This is why global capitals are watching. Because what happens next may redefine how emerging economies respond to economic coercion. Do they fold? Or do they adapt? Nigeria has chosen adaptation. Tonight, the trade war has a new front. And the rules are changing. The question now is not whether tariffs will hurt. They always do. The question is who blinks first. And for now, Nigeria isn't blinking at all.